Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
Oh, there's the mics on now. Thank you, Susan. And I haven't had a chance to look in the mirror yet.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. That's what you missed.
We came running in at the last second here. We apologize. We're a couple minutes late. Susan, everything good with you?
Yeah.
Margaret Campbell wants to know if this is the strip club show. No, Margaret, it is not. That show is on your mom's house, and that's coming in about a month.
Is that a spoiler?
We've talked about it. You've talked about it.
Who talked about it?
Remember I said there's some extraordinary adventures coming up.
You're the one that broke the news
I urged them to guess, and they immediately got it.
Yeah, but you're not supposed to say,
all right.
Oh, well.
Whatever, they got it.
You're going to have to wait for it, though.
Were you out looking at tile today? Is that what happened?
No. I had other stuff to do.
Okay. All right. No, you're not being outed. It's all good.
I know.
So that's after dark. We do that. You'll have to stay tuned for that. Any event today, we are, though, going to talk about relationships. It's going to be a little different than the way we do it on After Dark. But I just want to check in. Everything good, Susan? You're all right? Everything?
Yeah, I'm good.
I need you for this
I'm
one.
posting right now so that people will come and watch the show. I'm a little behind, so let me do that.
All right, that's good. All right, let me tell you a little bit about our guest today. It is Tony and Alisa DiLorenzo. They are co-authors of a bestseller called The 6 Pillars of Intimacy. They have been through a ton, and I got to say that most people that talk about relationships either don't have the training or don't have the experience. But there's no way you can minimize the experience that these guys have been through, and they've been able to find resilience, find connection, find their way through. And we live in a time, I think everyone agree, we all heard about this, where the stress of COVID ripped people apart a little bit. Particularly insofar as people that are not used to spending a lot of time together were suddenly locked in a house together and maybe discovered they didn't have what they thought they have. Tony and Alisa have been married for 25 years. They have 2 children, and they have been through some stuff. They were recommended to me by one of my crack producers from my HLN program, and all my producers were crack on that show, to be fair. But they came highly recommended, so let's get into it. Tony and Alisa, thank you for joining us. There you are.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
You bet. So I'm not quite sure where to start. Let's, before we pull the curtain back and start making recommendations, why don't we tell people your history a little bit, sort of what you've been through, and if you don't mind, this sounds like this history is going to be pretty involved. I don't know if we want to talk, maybe just give us the history. If you want to slip in how you found your way through, I'm not sure if there was overlapping on some of these things, or I imagine there was, because some of it looks to me like the stress was so great from the one thing that you went to another, and then that one went out of control, and that's just the way these things kind of work. So who wants to be my subject?
Go first. I'll jump in. I want to say this from the beginning. Alisa and I, when we first met, I think that's where some of the dysfunction even just started. When we first met, I had just turned 21. I would say I was probably pretty much an alcoholic. When you're blacking out and waking up at 3 a.m. in, downtown Boulder and trying to make it back home and smoking weed and doing whatever, it wasn't the greatest start. But we found each other in Boulder, Colorado in 1994, and it was supposed to just be this summer fling. And that's how our relationship started.
According to whom? According to whom?
Well, we both mutually agreed because he was a student at CU and I was a student at a small school in Indiana, DePaul University, and I was going back for my senior year. So it was very much like,
got it.
We got 8 weeks, it'll be what it is.
Yeah. And so when she did leave, I was crying. I was just like, this is the love of my life. and I can't believe I'm letting her go. But there was definitely dysfunction in the long distance relationship. And then we ended up getting married young. I was 23, she was 22 when we said our I do's and had no clue what marriage was going to look like, other than maybe, looking at your rom-coms where everything ends up happily ever after. And it's just like every sex scene is the perfect sex scene. And that's what we thought marriage was supposed to be. And unfortunately, when you step into marriage with those ideals and those expectations and they don't happen, things can go sideways.
Let me ask you this, just so I understand really quickly, Lisa, so I understand the perspective that you guys bring. What are do you each of you have professional training or anything like that, or what's your sort of backgrounds?
So I got my undergraduate degree in psychology and then went on to pursue careers in business and eventually got certified as a coach after seeing the needs that we were having in the One Extraordinary Marriage family.
Sure.
Yeah. I have no professional degrees.
Okay. What'd you do for a living?
When we were young marrieds, I happened to start in business and sales. And then I got into what's called paintless dent repair. And so I learned the trade. My dad was a plumber and general contractor here in Southern California. So I grew up in the trades, went to college and didn't really feel like I wanted to sit behind a desk. So I learned a trade and thought I was going to do it for 3 years. And that became my career for 22 years.
Interesting. Okay. So now we're into this idealized, there's alcoholism lurking in the background. You have this idealized start to your marriage, and what happens?
Pretty quickly, I had known that Tony was, reading Playboy magazines, looking at porn prior to getting married. But the early years of our marriage, when we were young, when we weren't making a whole lot of money, we were working opposite shifts. And that's really when the pornography started to escalate. And, it escalated into chat rooms. It, became one of those things that when he would travel, when he was doing the paintless dent repair and would travel to the East Coast, it got to the point where you were even trying to pick up women in bars.
Yep.
And so we started facing pretty quickly a disconnect in our sexual intimacy that just, I think, really left us both wanting and disappointed in what marriage was.
Yeah. It wasn't fun. I'll tell you that. We lived in Palm Desert. We had no money. I can remember summer sitting there, no AC on, and thinking, this is the worst thing ever. And why are we doing this thing called marriage?
Yeah. And,
that's awful.
As our marriage continued to progress, we were also battling a lot of debt. I mean, because we were long distance back in, 94, that was still cell phone or not, that was before cell phones. And so we were long distance and financed the entire first year of our dating relationship and then the early years of our marriage on credit cards. So you've kind of got this whirlwind thing going on where we're starting, a lot of alcohol in our marriage. We've got pornography in our marriage. We aren't making a lot of money, but we're trying to keep up with friends. And so the debt. And so we were in, we look back now and we're like the perfect storm. I mean, any one of those three could have destroyed our marriage. And
Tony, there were some Indian casinos around that area. Did you do any of that?
I didn't. I never got into gambling. Yeah, Morongo's up there, and
the one vice he didn't have.
Yeah, no, I never got into the casino scene. It wasn't one of the things that really intrigued me at all.
Good. That may have been.
Yeah.
We'll put that under.
Good.
Thank goodness.
That
might have taken you guys out.
We were trying to make marriage work, but we were so disconnected. We didn't know how to talk to one another.
Yeah.
Our sex life sucked. We're struggling financially. And then you throw in the loss, we start having children and then you have the loss of a child. And
wait, slow down. We don't know about that. Hold on. We don't know about this loss of a child thing. Yeah, this is the first time we're hearing about that. So you do what every couple does when things start going bad. I know the solution. Kids. That's going to solve our problem. So you have kids. How'd that work?
Oh my gosh, I still have this vivid memory. The first child is now 19, but I have vivid memory. He was probably 3 weeks old. I finally get out to go to the grocery store. I leave my cell phone at home. And when I get back home, Tony is sweating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Alex had literally screamed his head off for the entire time, 45 minutes that I was gone. And we didn't know what we didn't know about parenting. So that was, anybody that thinks having kids is a solution, I'm here to tell you, adds a whole lot of stress.
Yeah.
And just
only makes things worse.
Yeah. Yeah. So we
how
had
did you deal with the cost? I mean, you're already in debt and the child adds really potentially exponential cost. How did you guys deal with that?
So what we ended up doing, what was it? Our third year marriage, I left my job and hiked the Pacific Crest Trail. I took a sabbatical at 27. I was like, I'm out. And I hiked from Mexico to Canada for 4.5 months. Mm-hmm. And when I got back, it was a tough go. Mm-hmm. So we hadn't had Alex yet. And it was just a tough go. I was deep into my pornography again, was shutting out the world. I was scared to even go outside because you go from just hanging out on the mountaintops to being in concrete jungle of Orange County at the time where we lived. And about a year after that, we decided it was time to move. Mm-hmm. Needed to get out of California. I grew up in California. My family's here, but it was like, we need to move. And so we went up to Spokane, Washington to just get a reprieve. And so right before Alex was born, we had been working on all of our debt and had actually finished that. We had actually gotten rid of all our debt just about the time Alex was born.
That's the first time we ever worked as a team in our marriage.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And so the child comes, and that probably goes okay for a while.
Mm-hmm. And then we get pregnant for the second time, about a year and a half later, almost 2 years later. And the day after Alex's second birthday, I deliver Andrew at 18 weeks. And he never took a breath. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
18 weeks is too little.
Too little. There was never a chance.
Yeah.
And I, 2 weeks before Christmas, and that's when I started struggling with depression, because it was, what do I do now? How do we relate to one another? We'd figured out how to get out of debt, but pornography was still there. We were still, not communicating well. And now on top of that, we've lost a child.
Mm-hmm. And that was probably the darkest time. That was a tough time. I can still remember in those moments just being mad and angry and just crying and hurt, because Alisa, even though our marriage wasn't perfect or what we thought it was going to be, she's my wife and I love her, and I loved her then and I love her more now. Mm-hmm. And yet then she was gone. She was lost. I couldn't connect with her in any way, shape, or form. Alex was 2, and I didn't know how to address the anger I felt inside. So all I remember, and it's still vivid in my mind right now, and it's one of those times that I've had to just, forgive myself. But I just remember trying to get Alex to sleep. Alisa's checked out, and just screaming at this 2-year-old who had no idea what was going on, and just so mad and finally just falling on the floor, just crying and just like, I can't live with this. And it was a tough period, because I needed my mate, my wife, beside me to do this, and she wasn't there, and just didn't know where to go, and it was a tough time. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You must have been drinking.
I can't recall. I was big into cycling. I grew up road cycling, and I remember in that period of time there were just weekends when I would just take off, and it wasn't.
So that's sort of your move, is to leave.
Yeah.
Check out. Check out on the bike. Check out with the porn, that kind of thing. Got it.
Yeah.
All right. So move us forward a little more quickly if you can because it's getting very painful. So how do we? Where is the bottom, and how do you get out?
So the bottom, that was the bottom.
Yep.
Okay.
Within 3 months after losing Andrew, we were pregnant again. And in that space too, Tony was coming to me and saying, I need to finish this. Pornography addiction needs to be done. We need to get back a handle
Yep.
on what our life is going to be. And we tackled the
Mhm.
porn
Yep.
first.
Yep.
That was the first big, like, we're going after this in our marriage.
Yeah. And then we got over that. Abby's born. And then, we're just moving along. And so year 11, we come into this place where we got a 5 and a 2-year-old. Great. I mean, we're just moving along. It's like things are going well. They're not extraordinary. They're not amazing, but they're just sort of like, we're here. And we happened to be watching a TV show. Our friends had their daughters on a TV show. They were doing like beach tennis. And after their show, these 2 couples came on and they were sharing about how they had done sex challenges.
Mm.
And it was just intriguing. One had gifted her 40-year-old husband for his birthday 365 days of sex. They never say how long they had sex. And the second one, they had done 101 days. And it was just an intriguing segment that we were watching.
Different way to do marriage. What does it look like to make one aspect of your marriage a priority and to really focus? And that episode, that segment on TV actually became the catalyst for changing everything in our marriage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Tell me more. Did you get professional help at any point? Did you said some things that were like, we got over porn addiction. Tony had the porn addiction. We didn't, but we were affected by Tony's porn addiction for sure. And Tony's porn addiction was affected by us, but Tony had to get over the porn addiction.
Mm-hmm. And we started taking steps. When we saw that segment, Tony challenged me to do a sex challenge. And in that space, we learned, and I do very intentionally use the word we learned what it looked like to, after all these years, make our marriage a priority again, what it looked like to be able to talk to one another again, what it looked like to have fun as a married couple, not, boring and roommates and just going through the motions. And, you actually just
Susan,
do a lot
if you have
of
any questions or comments, I'm curious on go ahead.
So you addressed your sex life problem first, and you said, okay, this has to change, obviously. And who was less interested?
That would be me.
Which is
Tony
typical,
suggested it, and I
because
said no.
that's a normal thing for females, because we're busy with the kids, and we just don't have that drive like the guys do at that particular time in our life, which, I did the same thing to Drew. I understand that. But it's good that you address that, because maybe then he wouldn't want to use porn so much if he was getting a little more attention in that area, which we kind of find not, as important. So maybe that had a little bit to do with it, not the addiction part of it, but maybe just the intimacy part of it.
Yeah, and by that time the porn was already done. I think more than anything, it was the connection. Like, how do we stay connected through this thing called marriage in all different forms of intimacy? And that was just the catalyst for us to get started again and going, okay, we've been at this for 11 years. What are we going to do? Because we're determined to live out our I do's, and so what are we going to do to make this change? Or are we going to just go through life and our marriage just ho-hum? And we just decided to get radical around this one area that was the impetus to really bring in the other forms of intimacy, emotional. We talked about spiritual intimacy during that time, financial intimacy. And so that was, in those 60 days, something changed in us that we never had happened before. And we were like, wow, this is amazing. Like, there is more than just sort of living out in this way of like, do the chores, look at the kids, go to work, and come home and repeat.
Right. Yeah.
Susan, any thoughts? Because it's very, very interesting to me on a lot of levels.
I used to feel like intimacy was like if he did the dishes for me. Like, I was like, okay, now you're gonna.
And I used to get confused when you would talk about intimacy, because it didn't
like, it was like,
make sense.
If he didn't just sit on the couch and watch TV while I was doing all the work, I was always like more. I felt like I was more in touch with him. You know, I felt better about myself because he was putting an effort out, and he still does the dishes, you know, even if he has a busier day than me. And, you know, but I also cook dinner, and, you know, we trade off. But I remember thinking, you know, pre menopause that that was sexy, that meant he cared about me, or he wanted to be closer to me, and he knew that I wasn't going to be angry that he didn't do anything.
Well, talk a little bit more about post-menopause. In other words, how did it change? Susan.
Well, I mean, first of all, when my kids all left for college, that was like the best babysitting center in the world. And I had freedom, you know, we were alone. And then I had a hormone replacement after I went through menopause, which was hell. You know, because my vagina dried up, and I was like, okay, don't want to have sex. Something's wrong. So had that arranged, and yeah. And
solved.
Suddenly I was like, I want to be the one instigating sex. What is wrong here? And then a light went on, and I was like, you know what? Men and women are totally different. And I got it. And I have a lower voice now. I used to have a really high voice.
So what happened is I gained, my wife achieved empathic appreciation of her male partner and all male partners by becoming more male, essentially, by being androgenized. She was like, holy shit. And in fact, every female to male transgender I've spoken to says the same thing. They'll say something on the order of, I'm sorry. Like, oh my God, I didn't know. Like, and my response to those folks are, yeah, and God did that to us when we were 13. I want you to imagine being 13 and stuck with that same feeling. No, I'm not kidding. And then again, we're talking about my conversations with. I had a long conversation with Chaz Bono about this, and he was like, oh yeah, oh my God, I can't even imagine. So there you go. That's it. Hormones have a lot to do with it, but it's one of the layers of your story that makes me interested. One of the interesting elements of your story, anyway, is Alisa. You were sort of 5 years postpartum at that point, with a major postpartum depressive episode, right?
I wouldn't say it was
5 and
major.
11-year-old.
When we did, at what point in time when you're asking about 5 and 11?
When you did the sex challenge.
The kids were 2 and 5.
Oh, 2 and 5. Okay, it was much before that. So, you could still be, well, if they had put you on meds, you probably still would have been on meds. Is that the case?
I was never medicated.
Okay.
In coming through that depression, it was very much, and in hindsight, I will tell you, I should have gone and gotten help. It's what I tell women now. And I can, well, how old is she now? She's 16. So 14 years ago, it still wasn't being talked about. Postpartum depression was not talked about then the way it is now. And when I look back on where I was when Andrew died, and even after Abby, when I was trying to figure out things, in hindsight is 2020. And if you're dealing with postpartum depression, please go get help. Don't do what I did and try and word it out. It just
it is a profoundly biological process. It is dangerous. It is dangerous for mom and child. It needs serious attention, and don't screw with it. And there's very effective treatments out there. And it doesn't mean you're broken or a bad mom, even though you're feeling all those things with the depression. It has nothing to do with anything. You're just going to get through this biological state you're in, and everything will be fine. It will be fine. But don't do that to yourself. And by the same token, postpartum psychosis, which is even a more dangerous process, anything like that. These are biological events that are precipitated by the pregnancy and then being not pregnant suddenly. Please take care of these things. And then, the postpartum biology shifts too. I mean, that's the part I'm kind of interested in, which is that you weren't interested, which is sort of normal, and it's kind of God's way of making sure we don't have too many children. So we don't, it's certainly the way we make sure we don't have one on one. Yeah, we're supposed to make sure we don't have one on top of the other, but you guys overrode those impulses.
Unless you're the Derricos.
Yeah, Derricos, yeah. They have 17 kids or something. But how did you overcome that kind of resistance and that, because the biology, again, when at that stage of motherhood can be kind of powerful, where it's even physical intimacy looks not just uninteresting but kind of uncomfortable. How did you overcome all that?
For me, literally, I describe it as my come to Jesus moment. I was standing in, Tony had suggested we do this sex challenge. I immediately said no. Yep. He's hopeful something's going to happen that night. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm going to go put a face mask on. We're getting nothing tonight. Like, it's over. And the next day I'm standing in my garage with a basket full of laundry, and this thought comes to my mind, and I do call it my come to Jesus moment. And the voice says, if you're not willing to try, your marriage is likely over. He's not asking you to do anything crazy. He just wants you to make him a priority, and he wants to have sex with you. And it's not a bad thing when a husband wants to have sex with his wife. And I was like,
right.
Oh, that's.
I wonder if that was your intuition.
Well, it's definitely your intuition.
Come to Jesus, like somebody's whispering in your ear, like your grandma or something.
Well, to the people that have these moments of insight like that, often, I'm sure, Alisa, you can talk more about it, will describe it as coming from the outside in. It doesn't feel like it came from in you. It felt like somebody put it in there, right?
Yeah, it could have been literally somebody standing behind me and just whispering in my ear. And it was so powerful. Yeah. It was so powerful. And the realization that with a 2 and a 5-year-old, I didn't want my marriage to be over. And again, he wasn't asking me to give up anything. He just wanted, not just, but he wanted to have sex with me on a daily basis because we were going to do a 60-day sex challenge. And the more,
which women cannot believe men can do.
So yeah, Susan, speak to that, because Susan's like they literally that seems like sure, try it. Yeah, you'll lose interest after 3 days, and we're like, no.
Well, there used to be a running joke on with Adam and Drew on Loveline that Drew was a very passionate man, and we weren't having sex, and I a couple of weeks went by, and I was like, shoot, we haven't had sex in 2 weeks, and he was like, I know. Maybe it was a month. I don't know. But, and I was running after 3-3-year-olds or whatever. I wasn't really in my sexual prime. But then I said, God, I swear, I'm going to make a bet you can't have sex every day for a week. And he's like, oh, yes, I can.
That was no problem.
Yes. And he did. He tried. He came. He got home. With me I was like, okay, I guess I have to do it. I bet him,
That was with me on 4 hours of sleep and getting up at 5 in the morning and all the craziness that was going on in our life at the time.
And he'd get home at 1 in the morning. But because we couldn't really do it when the kids were awake. You know what I mean? And, but I was like shocked. It just didn't make sense to me that men had the ability to be so extremely sexual every day. I just didn't get it. I dated guys, and then we had a long distance relationship. So we only saw each other like maybe once a week on the weekends or whatever. And then we moved in together, and he was working a lot, so it wasn't like we were really making sex a priority. And then we got married, and then I got pregnant, so that we couldn't have sex for like years. So I didn't really understand men's needs, because I hadn't lived with somebody who had a really strong drive. So, I mean, I know I pushed him away, and I feel bad about it now, so I'm trying to make it up.
Yeah. But Susan, I
don't know what I should do with that. Let's talk more about that. So what was that, Lisa? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, I was going to say,
I was lost in thought.
We actually, one of the things that we talk about within the One Family, our community, is doing a 7-day sex challenge, right? Both husband and wife prioritizing sex for 7 days, not just to make it about the sex becomes the catalyst, but to actually watch what happens for both husband and wife when they're making one another a priority, right? To see how your conversations shift, to see, you mentioned that Drew does the dishes. I remember when we started doing our challenge, all of a sudden I was convinced that the dish fairy had moved into our house, because I would, put a child to bed and come out and my kitchen was clean. I'm like, what is this? Who's moved into my house?
That's all it took.
So again, we are as male humans, we are exceedingly simple to make happy. It's exceedingly easy. And everything else, we'll start wanting to make the relationship work, and we'll start wanting to not fight. We'll start wanting to do things. Our whole sort of biology shifts. So naturally we become more open to stuff. And when you're, there's a flip side to it when we're being rejected, which is, particularly when they're younger males, which is, look, I've got this biology I've been dealing with since I was 13. I've selected you to help me with this, to be the focus of it, and you're rejecting it. It feels not just like you don't understand. It feels like a deep wound with it too, because it feels like this is a really intimate part of me you're rejecting. And so men get they don't admit to themselves, frankly, how wounding it is and how much it gets them spinning and thinking of other things and turning to pornography and other stuff. So,
well, they have to take care of it somewhere else. So.
Well, that's sort of, I mean, they don't have to violate their vows, but they have to do something.
Yeah. and that becomes kind of weird
when
for
you
them.
There was back when we were that age, and when we would have conversations about, well, something's got to be done, you'd be like, oh, how you say good day? How do you? It's like,
wait, I have to do this?
No,
Wait,
not even that. It was just sort of, well, yeah, that's toxic masculinity writ large. Here it is.
Right.
And,
I didn't even know the word for it, but maybe yeah.
And that was again no understanding. And say what you will about Laura Schlesinger, back in the days in the 90s, she was pointing this out over and over and over again. I remember, because I knew Laura and I had some issues with some of the stuff she was doing, but this one area she was crystal clear about and was giving really good messages, I thought, back then. And so it's been around for people to grab onto, but I've not seen a couple do it. So I'm glad you guys are doing this. And so you mentioned your community. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So we go through our 60-day sex challenge. Just got to hit this just real quick. And because Susan, what you're saying, when Alisa said yes to me, I was a deer in the headlight. I was like, yes to what?
Yeah.
She's like, we're going to do the challenge. And the first thing that I thought about was like, oh no, I got to perform. How am I going to perform? Am I going to be actually able to do this? And so
Normal.
I was petrified for a little bit. But we finished 40 out of the 60 days. And it revolutionized our marriage. And we were able to start speaking. We had shared it with our church, and they asked us to speak at a retreat. And after we spoke about this, people are like, what's next? What are you going to do? We're like, we're not going to do anything. We're happy. We're like going to move on, and we're going to, keep going, doing our thing. And if we need marriage counseling or coaching along the way, we'll get it. People are like, no, you need to share more. And so we started the One Extraordinary Marriage Show. And that was 12 years ago now. And we just began sharing from our hearts, just being open, honest, and transparent about marriage. The stuff that happens every day, every week, the good, the bad, the fun times, the hard times. And just the one family is who is our audience. It's who we speak to and we share each and every week with. And it's just been a journey over 12 years of us even learning and studying marriages and studying our own.
Yeah.
And we just got really serious about like what's happening out there and how can we understand it better, so that way we can just speak to those, just a normal person who's just going down the street going, man, my marriage is struggling. It's not horrible. If there's addiction or trauma, then we always say, go get help.
Right.
Like, make sure you're getting help to deal with the trauma, with the addiction. You need to deal with that. We're here to encourage you and give you hope and show you that, hey, where you're at, where you're stuck right now, you don't have to stay there forever.
Right.
So what if I take the quiz, when you go to the oneextraordinarymarriage.com, right? You get the 6 Pillars of Intimacy quiz. And what am I going to learn on that quiz?
So really, we designed that quiz to be a companion to the book that we wrote that was released last fall called The 6 Pillars of Intimacy. And what we realized when we did that 60-day sex challenge and just in the last 12 years of looking at marriage is that while so many people will say, I want more intimacy in my marriage, and they're often referring to the sexual intimacy, what we found when we did that, and we've looked at, talked to hundreds and hundreds of people over the years, is that there's really 6 different forms of intimacy. And so the quiz helps you identify where you're strong, whether it's emotional intimacy, how the two of you communicate, physical, financial, spiritual, recreational, and sexual.
Yeah. Tell me about financial intimacy. That's the least sort of intuitive category.
Absolutely is.
Yeah. A lot of times people hear financial and intimacy and they're like, dude, how does that go together? But really, if you look at every relationship, every marriage, money is an aspect of that. How the two of you plan financially, how you're providing for one another, whether we're talking about, monthly bills to estate planning. And really, it's about developing this closeness and connection in all areas of your finances.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised there's not a parenting intimacy category, right? Or does that fall into something else?
Actually, and we literally just did a show on this last week.
Yeah, we did.
But when a husband and wife develop strength in each one of the pillars, it completely shifts how they parent, not just how they're relating to one another, but how they're speaking to their children. And so out of the education and understanding that they have, they shift how they parent.
Yeah.
You guys have been together how long now? 25 years?
Yes. Married 25,
right?
together 27.
Yeah.
And you had a very, what do they call it in French? Like a coup de coeur or something, where you had a lightning bolt experience with Alisa. Like, this is the love of my life, right? Or at least it became that when she tried to leave. Or was it at the beginning?
Yeah, it became that when she tried to leave, yes.
2 months in.
Yeah.
So you didn't have the lightning bolt from the moment it all started?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It was a summer fling.
So the lightning bolt, and I think these lightning bolt experiences are really interesting, because sometimes they create great problems and sometimes they create great renewing properties to a relationship. In other words, is that for you, Tony, is that lightning bolt kind of still with you? Do you still have that? Is that kind of a generator of anything for you, 25 years later?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely is.
Yeah. See, but here's the problem is, if you've had trauma in your childhood, like real trauma, the sources of those lightning bolt attractions make you attracted to people you shouldn't want to be with. So I always tell people, like, think more butterflies, not lightning bolts. But people like lightning bolts. Lightning bolts have lots of good properties to them, unless you have this pattern of bad picking from the lightning bolts from the trauma. And if you can kind of tone it down a little bit, so it's not like, extreme lightning bolts, maybe a little light lightning bolts, but mostly butterflies, maybe that'll work out. But otherwise, I really think people have to get treatment, because that thing that is so renewing for relationships is sort of off when you've had a lot of trauma. It's interesting. I've tried to figure out a philosophy for dealing with that, but I do think, when you have that kind of, you use the word love of my life. Susan, I guess I use that word with you too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm aware that feeling has renewing properties to it that I could feel at this moment. Like, and for us, it's 40 years later. And so when people ask, how do you do it? How do you do it? It's like, well, there's various things. No idea. But this kind of,
I'm surprised he stayed with me. I mean, here he was, hot doctor. He had all these radio and television shows. Girls were fawning all over him. I was at home with 3 kids. He was on the road. Sexless Marriage, like,
it wasn't
busting my butt. I mean, I was really lucky that he was in love with me, because I was a tyrant.
You were irritable, but we had a lot going on.
But then I got depressed.
Yeah.
And my hormones started changing early, because I went through menopause at 45, and then I was like super anxious. Then I had to get therapy and get on psychotropics, and then my hair fell out, and then I was more pissed off about that. Didn't feel sexy, felt horrible about myself, and blamed him for whatever reason for everything, because it's always your fault, Drew.
Well, I'm glad the memories are as disturbing as you described them. They were not. It was not that disturbing to experience.
But you were a workaholic, so you were happy to be at work. And I used to always tell people, like, when a producer would come over and go, "We're going to start a new TV show called, Dr. Rehab with Dr. Drew," and I was like, just get him out of the house. He has to be busy. He has to go to work, because he's happiest when he's working. And then he'd get more and more shows, and they'd all pile up. And I knew he was happy doing what he was doing, but it wasn't we weren't having sex as much as we do now because he has a lot more free time on his hands.
Mhm.
But I wasn't ready
And you
for
have
it.
a lot more free testosterone on your hands.
Right. I mean, I'm also not raising 3 kids, but
Right.
I mean, motherhood is a very difficult job. I know I didn't work full time. I was a travel agent. I helped you run your business. I did your travel. I was really busy. I had work, I worked with like adults while I was also raising my kids. Just so
we
I
had
would be
triplets,
sane.
just so you know.
But I was also,
Nice.
taking care of
Yeah.
a huge house, the kids in their private school, and getting them to all their sports, and it weighs down.
But you understand, I was aware of that, and I was your teammate.
So I just made sure
we
you worked as much as possible.
We had lots of different priorities that were getting in the way, and this is what Tony and Alisa are talking about: is that those priorities were piling up on the priority of the relationship. And to me, I kind of knew that would eventually relieve itself. And I felt like it was almost an important choice that we made because all that stuff was real. we really had to do all that stuff. And we did it as teammates and we, gutted it out and did it.
But it used to really piss me off when people go, "You're so lucky to be married to him."
Ugh, yeah,
and I would go, "Oh," I would freak out. If somebody said that to me, I was like, "Excuse me?" I was like, "Who is he married to? I do everything." Like I was just like but now when people say you're so lucky to be married to him, that was like a comment on After Dark recently, and it was like somebody goes, "Oh, she's so snobby, she's so lucky to be married to him." Now I actually agree.
Our present life is such that
right,
you
like
agree.
I
But
actually
nothing has changed.
I want to
really.
apologize if I came off that way because I do appreciate being married to him, and I did then, but I think we were just stressed.
Yes,
out.
that's our life circumstances are very, very, very different, and that's
But
what Tony and Alisa are telling us that story.
I married a really great guy who's so intellectual. He knows everything about psychology, knows everything about medicine, he knows about biology, he knows about what I'm thinking when I'm not thinking,
That's not good,
what I'm
necessarily.
thinking when I'm drinking. Like he knows everything about me. He knows how to respond, and he stuck with me, which I was shocked.
Did either of you have any feelings like that?
I just think it's an amazing love story what you guys are sharing, and I think the beauty is that you share it, and more people need to hear that at times because, especially in this day and age, with everything looking picture perfect, and what we just went through over the last 2 years, thinking everybody is perfect.
Yeah,
these stories are the stories.
So I want to get to that. That's. Yeah, and you guys went through some shit too. I mean, Susan, the shit went down for them just like went through.
No, I know.
And here's the lesson everybody can learn. It pays dividends to find your way through it. It pays dividends to invest in it. And it's the heart's it's so easy to go, we'll leave. Well, the kids are going to be torn up. Oh, well, I can't stand this anymore. It's better than we're not fighting. It's all bullshit. The reality is if you commit and find your way through and get help and reach out for help and keep going and you get philosophical about exactly what you were talking about, which is, we got 3 kids and then we got to pay the private school, blah, 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 and I'm a workaholic. It's like, that's our stage of life right now. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. We'll find our way through this, and it does pay dividends. I got to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and talk about sort of what COVID has been doing to people and lockdowns and that kind of thing. And anything else you guys any wisdom you'd like to impart, we'll get to that as well. I'll be right back. Since the beginning of the pandemic, nearly 1 in 5 Americans has reported consuming an unhealthy amount of alcohol. Could be you, but only 10% of them are actually getting the help they need. Reframe is a neuroscience-based smartphone app that helps users cut back or quit drinking alcohol altogether. Using evidence-based tools, techniques, and content, Reframe guides users through a personalized program to help them reach their goals. Comprised of daily tasks, a comprehensive toolkit, a community forum, and accountability guides, Reframe is a modern, accessible, and affordable resource that can help anyone looking to reevaluate their relationship with alcohol. Reframe is backed by Harvard University and Emory University Schools of Medicine, and it is ranked the #1 alcohol reduction smartphone app worldwide with over 350,000 downloads. With Reframe, there's no stigma, just science, no labels, just support. To learn more, go to joinreframeapp.com/Dr. Drew. Use the code Dr. Drew for 25% off your first month or your annual subscription. That's at joinreframeapp.com/Dr. Drew. Let's talk about our friends at Hydralyte. I can't say enough about Hydralyte. You hear me talk about them all the time. It gets me through workouts and medical procedures and colonoscopies and COVID. It absolutely contributed to my recovery from COVID. Hydration is key to feeling healthy, and there's never been a time when that could be more important. We're in the height of cold flu season. Every headache has got you testing for COVID. Staying hydrated can keep the questionable symptoms at bay, and there's nothing better than Hydralyte to get it done. Taking their hydration formula one step further, now there is Hydralyte Plus Immunity. It starts with their fast-absorbing electrolytes and adds a host of great ingredients. Plus, each single-serve, easy-pour drink mix contains 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C and 300 milligrams of elderberry extract. Hydralyte Plus Immunity comes in convenient, easy-pour powder sticks that rapidly dissolve in water to make a great-tasting drink that has a 75% less sugar than your typical sports drink. It uses all-natural flavors. It's gluten-free, dairy-free, caffeine-free, non-GMO, and even vegan. Hydralyte Plus Immunity is also now available in ready-to-drink bottles at the Walmart next to the pharmacy, or as always, you can find it by visiting hydralyte.com/Dr. Drew. That is HYDRALYTE.com/Dr. Drew. And be sure to use that code Dr. Drew 25 at checkout for a special discount. We are back with Alisa and Tony DiLorenzo. Before we get into the topic I was promising, I noticed I have a licensed marriage and family therapist who calls in once in a while, is listening to our conversation. I want to get Eric up here. I have clicked on you, Eric, if you want to come up to the podium. People have a way of walking away from their phones after they raise their hand to come up. Eric. Well, in the meantime, before we get him hauled up here, let's talk a little bit about COVID and the stress that people have been under. I'm wondering what you guys have seen.
Yeah, it has been, I mean, I liken it to being in a pressure cooker, right? We went from a place, February of 2020, where everybody's living their life and doing their thing, to, I distinctly remember March 13th here in California. Literally, that was the day that my children both came home full time from high school, and Tony was home full time. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you people all need to go somewhere else. Like, I love you, but get out of the house. Really what we saw in so many couples was just this place of, there are so many stressors and so much uncertainty, and we don't know how to deal with it. So there were breakdowns in communication. Couples weren't having sex, financial stress, couldn't do anything. And so it just felt like the walls were closing in.
And did you see relationships splitting up, or were people sort of hanging in your world, or what kind of stuff were you witnessing?
I want to say in our world, we saw it all. I don't know, like, we could put percentages down. We haven't done any studies in the one family to find out who stuck it out or who left. But it was just it was a bit of everything. And I think in the early stages, people were definitely there. They were together. They were finding new ways to reconnect. It was an interesting time, though, because especially in that first 2 weeks to the month, I felt like it was almost like, hey, people are finding new ways to do some fun things together. Like, they're playing games, or doing this video, they're doing that. But as it extended, that's where I think that the real pressure cooker started coming in, and the frustration and what are we doing started to be exacerbated.
Well, and then we
talk to me a little bit. Go ahead, Lisa.
No, I was just going to say, just in some of the research we've done, just seeing the spikes. That first year everybody was holding together, but as year 2 started to come around, just the increase in people that are considering divorce, right? Because it's one thing if we're like doing this for a few months. When it starts to become a year and you're around all the time, and we don't know how to talk to each other, and the kids are full time, we're teachers and parents and everything else. A lot of people were saying, I don't know if I can do this. And there was,
I don't know how I would have done it.
Oh,
I say it all the time. I don't know if our marriage would have made it through. You would have killed me.
No, I don't think that's true.
No,
I think it would have been rough, though.
It's just hard. I mean, we were lucky because our kids were all adults. We were all at each other's throats for the first month or so because we all came from different places. But then we turned into adults after that. But when you have kids that you have in your house and they're taking all your energy, it draws away from your spouse. And then if your spouse is used to leaving the house like Drew did, and and has a full-time job somewhere else where they get to use their energy and be creative and do everything that he wants to do, because that's like his thing. I could see there would be a lot of resentment, if he had to stay home and teach math, because I couldn't teach math. There's no way. But I see also maybe the relationship wasn't good, but just the fact that they weren't together all the time kept the marriage alive, and we fortunately were at a place in our life where we liked being together, and we had more sex like the first, I don't know, 6 months. I was like, oh, this is working out. And then we started working together, but it wasn't, but I see how like men wanting to go out and do what they do and then coming back is easier. And because women don't really get appreciated enough for the fact that they handle all the kids' stuff usually, unless the woman's obviously the breadwinner. It could be the opposite as well. But yeah, being in quarantine with your family it just doesn't seem healthy to me.
But there were lots of creative solutions that people came up with. Well, this program is one of those solutions, right? We got to start figuring out what we can do out of the house. Susan, did you understand that's what you were doing when you came up with this?
What, this show?
What was it? Or Caleb, maybe you have some thoughts about that?
My wife and I, we felt guilty in the pandemic because everything was so horrible around us, and yet we absolutely loved it. Like we just, it was like, it forced us to stay. I mean, I already worked from home and we didn't have the baby yet, but it's like, we wanted to have a baby, and that's probably how we ended up pregnant is because of the pandemic. He's a pandemic baby.
Very weird for me to be. It's really, it's very strange for me to be doing stuff out of the home. I'm almost in denial about it. It's a very interesting thing. Eric, we got you finally. What's going on?
Hey, Dr. Drew, love the conversation today. Thanks
I figured you'd like that.
Jump on for a minute.
Yeah, what's up?
No, it's great. My days are crazy, and I don't always get to jump on, so I'm glad I got to catch this one. But it had me thinking a lot of about the whole relationships and intimacy, and how, like, what you guys were saying about when you work through something, how you come out better for it. I say with I was just curious your thoughts on this. I say with clients and couples that I work with, like, there's something about, well, relationships in general, but sexual relationships specifically, we use the word intimacy as often a substitute for sex, but they're not exactly the same thing. But I almost say it where sex in some ways is almost more intimate when it's not going well, when there has been issues that haven't worked out, when you have a sexual failure, when you can't quite perform. It's raw, it's vulnerable, and you almost have to kind of work through that. And then that makes it much better on the other end, because you experience each other's vulnerability in such a deeper way that you don't get when you're just like talking about it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And if perfect sense, but I think it warrants, we should define what we mean by intimacy in just a second. But
sure.
But to your point, I mean, there is not the sexual act is intimacy at the point of fusion, and fusing is an interesting psychological concept. In that you could have sex without fusing, or you could have sex at your deepest, where you're fused and most vulnerable, and play with that, and it really becomes an area for. I mean, it doesn't get closer than that to another person, right?
Yeah. Well, learning to feel safe with each other and comfortable with another person with that fusion, or what you were talking about earlier, feeling completely rejected by it. It's the relationships have a way of, I'll tell couples, like, these intimate relationships have a way of bringing up whatever insecurities, whatever trauma, whatever stuff is in the past. It's gonna bubble up to the surface. You may not necessarily realize it in the moment, but then it's like, if you really dig into it, that's what that is. And if you persist in that process, it can lead to so much healing, both on an individual level and as a couple. But you really got to go through it sometimes, and it'll take you to kind of some of these dark areas you never expected to go.
No, you're right, because people run away from it. They just run away.
Oh
yeah. So go ahead, finish your thought.
No, that was it.
Well, I want you to give us, as a professional, your definition of intimacy. It's hard. I'm putting you on the spot, and if you don't have a good one, you're welcome to say.
No, it's so the first thing that comes to mind is just about, like, inherent to intimacy is vulnerability. It's the way you allow yourself to be known, to connect with someone else. It's not just about sharing personal things, because people can share personal details, bad things that happen in their life, but still kind of be guarded and have their wall up.
Yeah.
It requires a certain level of like rawness, authenticity, like letting someone in and going to those insecure places with someone else and allowing them to experience that with someone. It's a long-winded way of getting there. I'm writing
some of these things down. I think these guys will agree that all of these things contribute. Closeness, vulnerability, appropriate boundaries, fusion,
right?
Authenticity, allowing in or letting in. I mean, that's all.
Well, and there's the interplay back and forth.
Yep.
What might be more too vulnerable for someone may not feel vulnerable enough for someone else, and then how do you kind of work that? There's intimacy that's happening in that moment as you're feeling out where your partner's boundaries are, and them learning about yours and what works together, what doesn't.
And the one thing I always thought was a good summary of attunement and closeness. The attunement would be another word, right, for intimacy.
Yeah,
is feeling felt. Feeling felt, or being accurately, authentically feeling felt. I think that's a Peter Fonagy term, if I remember right. And I just thought that one kind of summarized. All right, Eric, thank you, buddy. I appreciate it as always.
Thanks for letting me jump on.
All right,
Good
man.
talking.
So what do you guys think about what he was telling us?
Okay, I thought you were.
I'll let you go first.
I think he brings up so many good points, and one of the things that's unique about a word like intimacy, and this is so important when it comes to our relationships, is actually defining what that looks like between the two of you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Mm-hmm. Because it's one of those words that can get tossed around. It's why, I even write in the book, sex and intimacy have been so synonymous. But if that's not how you're operating in your relationship, then there's going to be confusion and disconnect. And so getting into this place of sitting down and having the conversation so directly of saying, well, what does this word mean to you? How will we define this? If we look at these different aspects.
Do you guys have a frame that you operate from? And is it something that you use when you're working with other people, or is it something unique to your guys' relationship? Or they're two different zones? They're two separate zones.
Oh, no. I mean, everything that we do with the one family that I do with coaching, Tony and I live out.
Sure.
And so that was really where the 6 Pillars of Intimacy, where the book came from, because what we realized about ourselves when we went through that 60-day sex challenge, and what came out of, what's come out of the last 12 years, is that we aren't single-faceted human beings, and marriage isn't a single-faceted union. And so while we can talk about the connection and closeness and sexual intimacy, we also have to talk about emotional intimacy. We have to talk about finances and how we connect physically and how we spend time together and what our spirituality looks like as a couple. And when that all comes together, that is when, to use your phrase, feeling felt, right? When you're able to discuss all of those things and be, as Eric was saying, authentic and raw and vulnerable, when that all synthesizes together, that literally is where the magic happens.
I'm noticing on your Instagram site, there's a lot of spiritual sort of inspiration. What is the spiritual component from your guys' perspective?
So we're followers of Jesus, Christians since
2001.
2001.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So 4 years after we got married.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And is that something somebody has to be in to be part of the one extraordinary marriage? And okay. No. And it's so aside from the religious. Yeah, I want to just know, aside from the religious piece, because there's religion and then there's spirituality, and those are things that kind of overlap and interrelate. So people don't take, because if you get too religious, people go. But I'm imagining you also have just straight spiritual sort of counseling and coaching. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it really comes down to, as a coach, I meet people where they're at. In fact, I literally had this conversation with a client the other day where, as their first conversation, he's like, we used to be religious. We don't want to talk about spirituality in our coaching. We don't want to talk about faith. And I said, perfect. I will honor where you're at. Can you just tell me how you got there? Because, the other part of that was we used to be. And I said, I just want to know what your story's been, just so I understand what the framework is and I don't cross over your boundaries. But the reality is that our show is heard in 150 countries. So I have coached Muslim second wives. We have, listeners in Africa who have told us, we're Islamic. And the truth is, principles are principles. So they will still work regardless of what your frame of reference is. Understanding them actually allows you just to level up your relationship.
Yeah.
Susan, you've been very quiet over there. I don't know if you're working on something, but I always want your sort of input on all this stuff.
No, I'm focusing on the restream for a second. Sorry.
You trying to get rid of some screwballs?
No, I don't know. Don't want to talk about it.
Okay. All right. Have you any thoughts so far, including you in this conversation?
No, I love the spirituality aspect of it. I mean, everybody needs to have a little bit of that in their lives. That's where I dropped off. Sorry.
I have a
how about
question.
the intimacy conversation?
I mean, intimacy is such a weird word.
Yeah,
but
I'm wondering what your thoughts are on it. That's why I came to you.
You are an empath. You're very you like intimacy, but because you're very thoughtful, and I can see like if I was married to somebody who wasn't quite an intimate type, that it wouldn't come from my side. You know,
well, meaning
because I wouldn't even know what it was. You know what I mean?
see.
It's almost like you taught me.
So I bring you into that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm kind of weird that way, probably because I just, I had kind of crappy relationships before you. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever learned it at a young age. But I think, that's something also you have to learn.
So how do you feel about it now?
Well, now I think I've learned. I mean, we've been together for a long time and we're really close. So still, believe it or not. But yeah, but it's the empathy towards each other and the love or respect, that you build.
So I'm beginning to feel like the lightning bolt is what renews me, and for Susan, it's just astonishment. That's what renews her. I'm astonished every day.
No, I am really attracted to you, Drew. Okay, you make it sound like I'm not, but I adore you. I think you're amazing.
I'm being
I mean,
funny.
I see women commenting on you all the time, saying how great you are and how hot you are, and
So therefore, you should
smart you
follow
are.
suit. You should.
No, I am, but I mean, sorry, I don't
They must know something.
I don't pour all over you every day
No,
with that.
I'm not complaining. I'm giving you shit. We're on a show here. This is you've been on After Dark how many times now? Don't you know that some of this is going to come your way?
I know. It's like,
but it has,
you should wait.
It's grounded in truth. Don't get me wrong. It's grounded in truth, but it's giving you shit about stuff that's grounded in truth. Not complaining.
I know, and I don't. I give back as much as I can. I know.
I'm really not complaining.
I mean, what is intimacy to you, Drew?
Like I said, feeling felt. I think I play with fusion probably more than even I should.
What does that mean?
You lose yourself in another person. That's a thing that humans do, and sexuality and stuff can be a part of that, particularly for men. And it's dangerous. If you don't have the ability to restore boundaries and have good boundaries, it can be evocative emotionally in ways that are not healthy. Put it that way. So it's closeness. It's just really it's closeness. It's reciprocity. It's sharing. It's all those good words. And feeling felt is the hardest part of it. How do you feel the feelings of another person? Right? As you said, you're probably not good at that.
Well, no, I mean I'm good at it, but you're extremely you have to express every feeling or get feedback from me on almost everything every day. And when you're working and you're away, I don't have to
just
do
so
it
you know
as much.
that's me holding back. Anyway,
and sometimes I'm like, dude, figure it out, okay? And that's where my
that's
intimacy
fine.
stops.
And that's
But
fine.
no, but I see how having somebody for that closeness is different than having them for sex. Having the commitment to just being there for you when you need them in any instance. And that's sad for people who don't have that, in a relationship. And everybody's looking for that, I think, men too, I guess.
Yeah. Differently, again, motivated differently, but yes, for sure. And maybe even with more dependency issues. We see how men do poorly when they lose their
So
life.
what kind of trauma happens to men that they don't get into intimacy relationships and they're just purely sexual?
Well, they can have lots of different.
Like a mean mom or?
Yeah. I mean, there's not one thing. I mean, it can be a lot of things. I don't want to really list them because they're going to sound pejorative. But men can get into exploitative kinds of postures, where they use people for what their needs, what they need, and then they kind of keep going
and take money from them.
No, well, that was she's referring to Bad Vegan. If you want to see a show, you guys should watch that show.
It seems like more. I think men are more likely to be less intimate and more sexual than women.
Yes, we go that way, but it goes.
So it's surprising for you to be more intimate than me, but then I probably had more. I don't know. I had intimacy problems because of something that happened to me in my past.
Well, your mom, you've always said all that narcissism.
Well, yeah, she was a narcissist.
Yeah, so that's what that is.
Oh, okay. So that would cause a woman to have less intimate abilities. I'm fine because I went through therapy.
We're going to a new level now, which is attachment styles, right? And attachment styles are a whole other topic. We have like 4 minutes, so we're not going to be able to even talk about it. But there are essentially 4 adult attachment styles. And I had a somewhat disorganized attachment style when we got married. I had a lot of therapy where I healed that to a more secure attachment style. And I have a feeling one of the reasons, Susan, you've been able to come along with the intimacy is that you like that secure attachment.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he used to be, okay, so when the kids were like a year old or whatever, I'd be there with the nanny all day, changing 30 diapers a day or whatever, and making dinner. And then he'd come home and he'd be totally exhausted, long day of work in the hospital, not just radio. This was before he would go to radio. And he'd sit down at the table and we'd look at each other and we couldn't even talk to each other. Like we were just that exhausted. And then he would yell at the kids because they were not doing something. And I looked at him and I said, you can't yell at the kids. He didn't even realize he was doing it. And so then I said, you should get therapy. And then he did it for 10 years. He took my advice, which was good. But I was just like, I've been here all day with these kids and they don't really deserve this. But neither do I.
Then we had a family therapist.
Nobody's perfect.
Then we had a behaviorist, right? A behaviorist because you were yelling too, if you recall.
Yeah, I was yelling at you for yelling at them.
No, there was a yelling, and that's why we knew there was a problem.
Was that after Douglas had his brain surgery?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So our son had brain surgery for an arachnoid cyst on his left cerebellum at 13 months. And I was spending a lot of time taking care of him. And then, the stressors were way up after that because I was trying to take care of 3 kids when one was sick and blah, blah, blah. So and he used to have problems like biting the other kids and he'd get in trouble a lot more. So we went to a behaviorist and they taught us how to give him timeouts.
And all of us. And we stopped yelling.
We got timeouts too.
Stop yelling right away.
I later in life, I said, when my kids would start driving me crazy, I go, okay, mommy needs a timeout now. And then I'd go in the other room for 10 minutes. It's like, I'm going to kill one of you if I don't leave the room.
So Caleb, you had a question.
Oh yeah. So my wife and I are going on our first vacation since our baby was born 8 months ago, and we're really excited for this trip, but we're also so obsessed with our baby that we're kind of afraid that we're going to miss him a little bit too much. It's going to distract us the whole time. So what sort of advice do you have for us on our first vacation after our first baby?
Well, I think part of it is just acknowledging that, right? Don't pretend like it's not going to happen, because I will tell you the first time we left both kids, Tony was the one that's like, I miss him. I miss both of them. Like, is that be okay? Do you think she's okay with my parents? I'm like, we're good. Let's get out of here.
I was a mess. I would say give yourself a good 24 hours just to know that everything's good. And that once that happens and you guys are in a good spot, then make sure you guys have some good meals, have some good times together, and enjoy it.
Yeah. Do things. I agree with that. And be prepared for more emotions than you expect. Like I remember when we went to Italy for our 10th wedding anniversary, or 5th or something.
10th.
It might have been sooner.
15th.
No, because the kids were little. But anyway, I remember I was so surprised.
Shit, I don't know.
I was surprised how much guilt I felt. I was like, whoa.
That was
guilty.
a long trip. But no, it was 10th. I think.
Wow. I was surprised.
We waited 10 years, but the first time we went away, we went to Vegas. That was the time when we went to the strip club and I cried all the way back. And
they
were 6
kids?
months old. Yeah. And we thought we could spur my my hormones with a strip club. It didn't work.
We don't recommend that.
That's the story. Yeah. And then, but I had no hormones. But anyways, be that as may, I found that if I played craps, I could stop thinking about my kids.
Jesus.
Because it was just like, I said, I'm in the zone. Just leave me alone. I have $100. I'm just going to keep rolling the dice because I swear to God, I haven't felt like this in a long time. So, but then, I walked away from the table and I thought about him again.
So that is
we're going to get there.
I wasn't there all night.
Like, we're worried we're going to get there and we're going to be like, oh yeah, we're free. And that's going to be the first day. And then we're going to get to that night or the next morning and we'll be looking for a baby. And we'll still have 6 more days that we're going to be out of the country. And he'll be staying with my wife's mom. But
it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Well, you have Zoom calls,
right,
and that's the good thing.
We didn't have that.
Yeah, we didn't have
that's
that.
true.
We just had to trust that he was alive. They were alive.
Yeah.
That was it.
So
We didn't.
We're getting worried as it gets closer.
And flip phone.
well,
We didn't have the technology.
Honey,
you have
it's
today.
going to be
you're going to
okay.
have a good time. Yeah, you're going to have a great time.
I know. We're excited
when is that,
for it.
When is that coming again? When is
It's at
that?
the
When
end of
we're in
April.
Bermuda.
Oh, right.
You guys will be out of town too.
Right.
Drew's got a gig in Bermuda.
I
So.
got to give a talk in Bermuda.
No, it'll be good. You guys will reconnect. You'll have, hopefully you'll have good weather. You won't be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If everything's going
Yeah.
well, as far as just keep yourself busy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And,
And having fun, not just busy for busy's sake.
My wife has already proclaimed, she's like, we don't have to worry about renting a car. We don't have to worry about going to restaurants because we're literally only going to stay in the perimeter of the resort. We're going to go outside and sit in the sun, come back inside the hotel, have fun, go right back outside, sit in the sun and not think about anything. No,
She's got the
no
plan.
thinking.
You'll have fun.
Literally.
You'll have fun.
Yeah, no, that's good.
I know you're trying to
that's
talk
good.
yourself into it. You'll be fine.
It'll be
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
It'll
it'll
be
be
good. After like the first day, maybe.
All right, let's kind of wrap this up. Anything else you'd like to point out to people before we kind of wrap things up here for you guys?
I just wanted to just emphasize one of the things that Susan said. Susan, when you were just sharing with us, you said, you talked about learning. And I think when we look at marriage, it's so important to go, okay, what are the skills that maybe I don't have that I need to learn? If I'm not as, intimate as I want to be, if I don't communicate the way that I want to, if I don't know enough about sex that, it's an issue in my marriage, what can I do and how can I learn what it is that I don't know? And to go after that. You said that it just impacted me so much to hear you say that.
Oh, good. I said something nice. Good.
No, we're good. We are good. I like you. I like hanging around with you. I like everything. So it's all
You know
good.
what? I love it when the guests validate me. I
Okay.
mean, it because I'm not used to it. Drew's always been the leader. And it's so nice to get a compliment like that when somebody hears something you say. Thank you. I appreciate it. And
Alisa,
thank you, Drew, for the same reaction. as
Alisa,
well.
keep going. Is there anything else you can sort of throw in there?
She wants to come back. No, no, I do. I appreciate it. No, I
Tony,
really
you got
appreciate
anything?
it.
Could you think of anything real quick before I let you go? Help me out here, guys.
I was going to say, though, when you're, seriously, Susan, when you were sharing all that you guys have gone through, the two things that came to my mind were, one, you guys were intentional, and you both were intentional, but you also took action in where you were. And I think that's just beautiful. It's what we have to do in our marriages, no matter where we're at. And I know you, Dr. Drew, are a proponent of this, of just sharing with people, like, you got to get help. And you guys are a testament to that, and going, we did.
Right.
So go get it yourself, wherever you may be. And I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and it is. We have not used this word perhaps enough in this conversation, but when you have commitment and live up to your commitment, you find solutions and you work it through. But you first must have and make that commitment and mean it. And that commitment has many layers to it. It's not just what you said at the altar. It's also by virtue of having kids together. That's a major commitment, and you need to live up to it. In the the triangle of love? Who's the guy that came up with that? The triangular theory of love. You're familiar with that? Let me find the guy's name. Sternberg had this triangular theory of love, and the requirements were liking. Wait a minute. What were the three? Passion, commitment, and intimacy. Those were the three components. And he felt to have consummate love, you had to have all three. If you had just commitment, it was empty love. If you had just passion, it was just sort of infatuation. And if you have just liking, it's kind of an intimacy, but it's not lasting. It's not committed, and it's not passionate.
Wow.
So it's sort of, this is a old model of Sternberg. It's interesting. Intimacy, passion, and commitment. So there you go. Thank you guys for spurring the conversation. I'm watching on the restream. People seem to really like the conversation, so it's good to talk about relationships. Yeah, William, yes, passion, commitment, liking. That's it. Did I say something different than that? Oh, I said intimacy instead of liking. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think you're saying.
Yes, passion, commitment, and liking are the three components. And interesting, I put intimacy in there. I feel like intimacy is the overarching title of it, all three of those things. Or at least intimacy comes with the three of them. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. And there are the 6 pillars of intimacy. Get that book now and check out the website. Let me get you that information. It is Instagram, One Extraordinary Marriage, or the website, oneextraordinarymarriage.com. And thank you for spending a little time with us, guys.
Thank you both for having us.
It's been awesome.
All right,
God bless you for all your hard work.
And for validating Susan, more important.
Yeah,
So,
even more.
Thank you.
See, look, I like you more.
Thank you, guys. So as Caleb warned us at the beginning of the show, we got a bunch of stuff coming up.
Which crack producer, somebody said all your producers take crack. Drew calls really good producers crack producers.
Crack producers.
I never knew
Excellent
that was a thing, but which one sent them?
Shayna sent him.
Oh.
And she
I can't remember who that was.
You would if you saw her.
I know.
You don't remember.
Hi, Shayna. Thank you.
The only one that you
I know her. I just
Emily Barsh is the only one you still talk to, right? Oh, and Emily Rayber too. You talked to her.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I just feel like I should.
It's funny. I know both of those names from that time I was on your HLN show years ago when we first met. I remember all those people.
They used to call you
Bill. Yeah.
Bill. That's right. Bill would do the booking. Yeah, we had what you call a crack team. We had a really crack team.
Yeah.
And we put on an hour of television.
You did that show for 4 years.
6
right?
years.
6 years.
6 years.
That's insane.
Sometimes 3 times a week, sometimes 4, sometimes 5.
I know.
And these 14 or so people put an hour of television on every freaking night. That's
I know.
unheard of.
I learned a lot from them. I wanted to kind of go in that direction, but it never made it there.
Well, here you are sitting behind a producer's
Yeah, I know. It's fun.
panel
This is
here.
a fun way to produce.
You're doing it all with Caleb.
Now I'm
the two of
letting
you doing
Caleb do it all.
Yeah.
I'm taking a little time off.
No, we had a great team, and I'm flashing on. I ran into Leanne Tweeden after years, and I think downstairs at the CNN booth or something. And I went, she'd be great for our show. And I went upstairs to Bill and I think who else was I talking to? Oh, Wendy. And I said, you guys got to book this one. And they found her Fredericks of Hollywood thing from when she was like a young 20s.
Oh,
and they're like, what? Oh my God, he's lost his mind. What happened to Drew? And then she came on the show and killed it. And then became a regular. And then she and I had a radio show together for a couple of years. So that's how these things happen. And then Caleb came, same thing. I didn't know about Caleb. They found him. And then Caleb and I, had a whole life together that flew out of that show.
He became our web guy.
So the point is that, it's interesting how these relationships kind of.
Because none of our team knew what the web was. Like, they couldn't figure it out.
It's not just that Caleb was extra good. It
They
wasn't
said,
that Caleb was good. Is that not the reason,
I think
Susan?
I can work with Caleb on this. I know what the web is, like a website is. Like, let's put this website.
We were clueless, not that Caleb was good. Okay.
No.
You had known me for
team,
maybe
not
like
him.
a day. You knew me for like a day,
came
maybe 2
in,
days,
and
you already handed me the
Me?
passwords. Susan,
Me?
both of you knew. Yeah, you knew me for like a day.
I was like,
on the
oh
show
no,
once,
this guy's good.
Right.
Yeah, because Howard and Valerie were just sitting there like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I was like, yeah, let's hire this guy.
Were you in the meeting we had at CNN in the conference room?
Yes, I was there.
Yeah, she was
and
there.
they were all
I
looking
remember.
at me.
Yeah.
I was like leading it, and I was like, how did this ever happen? Like, what the hell? So we sat down and we put together drdrew.com. I think we bought it back, remember, for like $5,000 or something. And Kayla was like, and we had this guy doing it. It was terrible. It was not working out. And he goes, no, I can do this for you. I didn't know he was going to be able to do vMix and put a studio together and become when I found out he was a tech genius on top of it, I almost cried. I was so happy.
This is all going
like,
on my
wow,
resume.
I didn't know you.
And put it down there.
I could not
Put it on
believe
loop.
it. No, he built drdrew.com and this show from the ground up. He's been with, how long have you been with us?
Oh, I've lost
How long have you
count. I
been
mean,
with
it's
us?
7
This is our
or 8
intimacy
years.
time.
Well, so it would be before
Yeah.
I got married because I went on your show after I got back home from proposing. So it's coming up on 10 years
HLN.
now. On HLN, yeah.
It's been about 10.
It does bring back
Lots
great memories
happened
because
in
I
time.
remember going to that meeting and I remember Howard, your manager back then.
Mhm.
I walked into the meeting and it was almost one of those where he was very much going to be a gatekeeper. Arms crossed. I'm not going to trust this young kid with my big client. And within minutes, he was suddenly my biggest defender. He went and told he went and said, "Look, we got to get this guy." And I felt him. I was like,
Right.
"Wow, how does he know? How does he know I'm trustworthy?"
How did that?
He was all
How
in.
did that happen?
That was his deal. That was his thing. He could pick talent.
Well, there wasn't much there. I mean, the website was a
but
show.
then how he knew to trust Caleb and
But he's psychic. He knows.
He knew.
Psychic manager.
He was great. And
then
every time I
got
hear his
along
name,
with
I miss
you,
him.
and he
Me too.
understood your language.
he and I worked together on a
explained.
handshake almost our entire career.
Yeah, everything.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. When he was
I
in,
wish
he
the
was
world
in.
was more like that.
Mhm.
Save a lot of money on attorneys.
Well-
No, we hit it off. Caleb and I have been friends for 10 years now, and I think he's like a son to me,
Aw.
Well, thank you, Caleb.
and
Thank you,
his
Susan.
baby's like a grandson
Thank
to me,
you to
and his wife's like
DiLorenzos.
a daughter to me.
Well,
But he's also my boss, so I have to,
you have to shape up.
he's better than a son.
Well, wait.
all
wait.
right,
You
you
just
guys.
said something about
Yeah.
baby. Do you want to see the baby photo of the day?
Of course.
So this is
let's see it.
Baby.
This is
baby,
my-
this is,
baby.
I had a dream that I
Camden.
was holding a.
these are all of the milk that my wife has been pumping are in all of those bags there.
For the
Oh
trip.
my goodness.
For the trip?
Whoa.
That's just this is from one part of the freezer that she's been pumping. And look at this little
Oh.
kid's face. He's thrilled. He's just absolutely thrilled
Oh my
looking at
God.
all that milk. So we have an outdoor freezer and indoor freezer that are now pretty much
He's
packed.
like, when are you
Wow.
leaving town? I
Yeah.
want to be with grandma. It's funny. I had a dream about I had Caleb's baby in my hand,
Mhm.
and I was holding him and I was calling him. I said, "I'm your grandma," and I looked down and he had a beard. And then the next day I was like, he came in. I go, "Oh my God, that was your face in my dream."
Maybe we should not have these conversations on a live stream. We
I
should-
know, but I
this
love
thing
that
on.
little baby. I want to hug him. He's so cute. I
know.
don't want him to be 4 years old when I get to see him.
After Dark has done something to us, Caleb. It's whatever,
He didn't have a beard at the beginning.
whatever restraint we had has been completely destroyed by those guys. So we're not even aware anymore what we're talking.
I'm gonna
No,
blame
but I
them
didn't
for all
realize
this.
it. I told him I had a dream I was hugging his baby and telling him I was his grandma, and then I didn't realize it till I saw Caleb the next day that it was him. I go, "Oh yeah, he had a beard," and it was.
Oh, this is all
probably
just gonna
you.
make
I was
it that
probably
much
saying-
harder for us to go on our vacation.
Yeah. Tom Cigar just said this is like Caleb on After Dark. That's exactly what this is. So instead of Nadav and Annie, we have Caleb in the booth. So if you are not After Dark listener or viewer, it's a show over at your mom's house, and we have two tech guys that I speak to on many of the shows who.
I've not had a dream about them being a baby in my arms yet. though.
Yes. All right. Save that for that show.
Caleb's my baby.
All right. We do need to wrap up. You and I have a bunch of commercials we got to do for the Corolla world.
Okay.
And
Thanks for sharing.
We thank you all for being here. We thank the DiLorenzos for opening everybody up and having an interesting conversation. Thank you, those of you that have been waiting patiently over there on Clubhouse for the conversation. And tomorrow we are having a big day. We are going to have a follow-up performance from Dr. Vladimir Zelenko.
We're gonna freeze Zelenko Friday.
Yeah, we're going to see what he is up to.
Yeah,
these
this
days.
should be interesting. But
Should be interesting.
I always feel guilty that we didn't talk to him more, and we kind of.
No.
I like the guy, and you know
I
what's
like him
even
too,
more
but-
interesting, Drew, is he might have some interesting Ukraine stories because he's Belarusian as well. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about
So
all
he
that.
might be able to talk
I
about
really- I
politics
don't
on the
want-
other end of the world because he's pretty connected.
I do. In fact, I'm going to write this down. What I want to talk to him about is the Ukrainian situation. Him, his perspective on the pandemic, not his specifics, you know.
He has a lot of
And he
data
has
from
like
Israel.
and his cancer, and he has kind of a
The fact that he's still alive is just amazing.
I know, he had a really serious
He
cancer.
reminds me of your dad.
Mm-hmm.
Like he kind of talks like him, and he kind of comes from the same.
Us Eastern Europeans will ourselves through life.
You might actually
sort of
be
the thing.
related, weirdly enough, if we look deep enough.
That would be interesting.
I know.
But I want to talk about these 4 things because I don't want to talk about early treatment and all that stuff. I feel like
he's got his like little
That's fine.
vitamins he's been
That's
selling.
fine. He can talk about
to
that,
keep
but-
you from catching it
But
for just health reasons.
I don't want to. We have
Z-Stack.
Paxlovid, we have molnupiravir, we have.
No, I know. I can't wait to talk to him.
much.
I know it's not gonna be explosive, but we do want to catch up.
Yes, I want to see how he's doing.
I don't think we'll get canned on YouTube.
We'll see. We'll be testing the.
Well,
limits.
if we do, who cares? Whatever.
Greg Grunberg on Monday, Jason Waller on Tuesday, and Naomi Wolf on Thursday of next week. So we will see you tomorrow at 3:00 with Dr. Vladimir Zelenko.
So I remember seeing somewhere where they said that the shape of the penis is actually also kind of like a scooper. It's almost like your penis going in and out is also kind of sucking out all the jizz out of her so that your jizz could go in.
Yeah, and I think you probably heard something, but twisted it.
So I dreamed
You
this.
may have turned the what you heard into a dream or something.
But why would I
There's a
dream
lot of
about-
weird. There's a lot of. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at